What you're seeing right now is the wolf that hasn't existed for over 10,000 years. In April 2025, a biotech company in Dallas, Texas, made an announcement that shook the scientific world. They claimed to have brought the dire wolf back from extinction. 3 pups, named Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi, were alive and roaming a 2,000-acre preserve in the United States. Sound like Jurassic Park? Because it kind of is. But the truth behind this story is far more complicated and far more controversial than any headline lets on. Today, we're breaking down everything. What the dire wolf actually was, how it went extinct, how scientists claim to have revived it, and why some experts are calling this the biggest science PR stunt of the decade. Let's get into it. First, let's talk about the animal itself. The dire wolf, Enoceon dirus, was a real apex predator that prowled North and South America during the Pleistocene epoch. These weren't mythological creatures from Game of Thrones. Though George R.R. Martin was certainly inspired by them, the dire wolf was a top-of-the-food chain hunter that dominated the continent for hundreds of thousands of years. Compared to the modern grey wolf, dire wolves were notably larger, heavier built with broader skulls, a stronger bite, and thick, pale fur suited for Ice Age environments. Think of them as the wolf equivalent of a tank. They hunted megafauna, giant horses, ground sloths, and ancient bison in packs, and their fossils have been discovered in enormous numbers across the Americas. One of the most famous fossil sites, the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, where thousands of dire wolf bones have been recovered, suggesting these animals were powerful enough to have been lured and trapped while going after other prey caught in the tar. But here's the thing that makes dire wolves scientifically fascinating and also makes their revival so complicated. They are not as closely related to modern wolves as we once thought. A landmark 2021 genetic study revealed that dire wolves and grey wolves diverged from a common ancestor roughly 5.7 million years ago, meaning they've been evolving separately for an extraordinarily long time. They were, in genetic terms, more like a distant cousin than a sibling, which, as we'll see in a moment, is a big deal. So what happened to them? Around 12,500 years ago, near the end of the last ice age, dire wolves vanished from the fossil record. Completely. And they weren't alone. The same period saw the collapse of megafauna across the entire planet. Woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats. It was a mass extinction event that wiped out roughly 3/4 of all large mammals in North America. The exact cause is still debated. The leading theories involve a brutal combination of rapid climate change, as the Ice Age ended, shifting ecosystems that destroyed the prey base these animals depended on, and, critically, the arrival of humans. Early human hunters were moving across the continents, placing enormous predatory pressure on species that had no evolutionary history with our kind. For dire wolves, it was the perfect storm. Their prey disappeared. The landscape changed faster than they could adapt, and they were gone. For 12,500 years, the dire wolf existed only in bones, in amber, and eventually in the imagination of a fantasy novelist. Until now. Enter Colossal Biosciences, a Dallas-based biotech company founded in 2021 by tech entrepreneur Ben Lamb and Harvard geneticist George Church. Their mission is bold: de-extinction. They're not just working on dire wolves, they also have active projects targeting the woolly mammoth, the Tasmanian tiger, and the dodo. Here's how the dire wolf project actually happened. Scientists extracted ancient DNA from 2 fossil specimens, a 13,000-year-old tooth found in an Ohio cave, and a 72,000-year-old earbone discovered in Idaho. From that ancient genetic material, they identified approximately 20 key genetic modifications across 14 genes, traits that give the dire wolf its distinctive appearance. Its size, the shape of its skull, and most visibly its pale white coat. They then took living grey wolf cells, edited those 20 mutations into the DNA, and transferred the cell nuclei into egg cells from domestic dogs. Those embryos were implanted into surrogate dogs, and in October 2024, Romulus and Remus were born. Khaleesi followed in January 2025. By 6 months old, the male pups were already nearly 4 feet long and weighed around 80 pounds each, on track to eventually reach 6 feet in length and 150 pounds at full maturity. Colossal called it the world's first successful de-extinction. The internet went wild. But scientists, not all of them were impressed, as you could expect. Here's where it gets messy. The International Union for Conservation of Nature officially weighed in, and their verdict was sharp. Their canid specialist group declared that Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi are neither dire wolves nor proxies of dire wolves, based on established scientific guidelines. And they have a point. Those 20 genetic edits colossal may represent a tiny fraction of the total genetic differences between species that diverged 5.7 million years ago. Colossal's own chief scientist, Beth Shapiro, acknowledged the animals are grey wolves with 20 edits, and admitted that resurrecting an organism identical to an extinct species is simply impossible. MIT Technology Review was even blunter, placing the project on their list of the 8 worst technology flops of 2025, arguing it may detract from real conservation by consuming resources, attention, and scientific credibility. Critics also raise animal welfare concerns. The surrogate dogs, the engineered pups, and the lack of regulatory oversight all sit in ethical grey zones that existing law isn't equipped to handle. And if these animals are ever released, the dire wolf's ecosystem is gone. The prey they evolved to hunt is extinct. Releasing engineered wolves could actually threaten the grey wolf populations already endangered across the country. But there's a legitimate counter-argument. Colossal's supporters say the real value is the technology, not the wolves. The gene editing techniques broke records for deliberate genome edits in a single animal. And those same tools are already being applied to living endangered species. Alongside the dire wolf reveal, Colossal announced the birth of 4 critically endangered red wolf pups using the same cloning methods. That's not nothing. There's also a biovault in development at Dubai's Museum of the Future, storing frozen samples from 10,000 species as a genetic insurance policy for life on Earth. So, where does this leave us? Are Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi real dire wolves? Scientifically, no. They're remarkable gene-edited grey wolves that look like something out of the Ice Age. Whether this project is meaningful depends on what you value: spectacle and innovation, or measured conservation that protects what's still here. One thing is certain: de-extinction is no longer science fiction. It's here, it's controversial, and it raises questions our laws, our ethics, and our ecosystems aren't ready to answer. Is bringing back extinct animals the future of conservation, or a dangerous distraction?